I'd like to welcome you to the Springfield Township Board of Trustees meeting. Today is February the 10th, 2015, and it is 5:30 p.m. Mr. Burning, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Burning?
Present.
Mr. Honolong?
Present.
Ms. McFarland?
Present.
All
Present.
And I think I'll pick someone in the audience to lead us with the pledge. Robin, how about you? Can you lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First thing we have on the agenda this evening is to recognize an individual who's been in our community for quite a few years. He has been a true servant leader in Springfield Township. And Chris, how long have you worked with Pastor Bailey?
Since I've been here, it's been almost 11 years.
And it's been an enjoyable opportunity for you, hasn't it? It's been an enjoyable opportunity for all of us. So based on the fact that he is retiring and I'm sure he's not going to be out of sight, we'd like to recognize you tonight, Pastor Bailey. So if you can step forward.
I've been to enough of these meetings to know how this works.
Well, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, just briefly. Thank you so much. I have been filing memories for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and some of the memories have been sweet, some are very sweet. This is going to go right on the top of the memory. So thank you. And I also want to thank, I was concerned when I walked in here because Sandy was putting these ice things here, and I thought maybe I was going to be part of an ice box.
We can do that if you like.
No. So again, thank you all very much. We'll go back to the back row here too.
Okay. Tonight we have a representative from the Hamilton County Solid Waste Department to speak with us for a few moments about the Hamilton County Solid Waste issue. Her name is Michelle Balls. Michelle, could you step to the podium, please? And thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Michelle Baltz. I work with the Hamilton County Recycling and Solid Waste District. We are a non-regulatory state-mandated agency, and the reason I am here tonight is to talk to you about waste and recycling contracting. So we were approached by Coleraine Township because they were interested in going out for waste and recycling for a contract on behalf of their residents, and they also reached out to their fellow townships, and Springfield Township expressed interest. So basically, our office, we are a resource for communities that are interested, basically for any of your waste and recycling needs, but we've worked with quite a few communities through the bidding process and putting together RFPs and even starting recycling for the first time. So that is why Colerain Township reached out to us. And we've been working with several townships, including Springfield Township and Colerain Township, and then also Ross Township in Butler County has come in and wanted to do this. Now, let me explain a little bit about contracting for waste and recycling versus what's the kind of program that Springfield Township has, which is a subscription-based program. So basically, your residents, it's up to them to call a waste hauler and subscribe for weekly curbside collection of waste and recycling services. Usually, many residents will just subscribe for the waste and not for the recycling portion. But there are benefits of a community contracting out on behalf of their residents for that service. And I'll go over briefly some of the benefits. You may have heard them before. The average cost for a resident in a subscription-based community like Springfield Township to pay for that service is $22.57 per month. In Springfield Township, it's a little bit higher than that. For waste, your residents will pay about $20.29 per month, and for recycling is an additional $2.75. Now that doesn't include a fuel surcharge, which is usually an additional 10 to 20% on top of that. So they're paying a significant amount, over $22 per month for weekly collection. A community that contracts out on behalf of their residents for waste and recycling service, usually that community pays, the average across Hamilton County is $12.07 per month. So did you get those numbers? It's $22.57 per month is the average subscription, and $12.07 for the average contracted. So it's a significant cost savings to the resident. Another benefit of contracting out is that you have more control over the waste haulers. So, for instance, you can specify what time they're allowed to start collection. So you don't have a hauler collecting at 5:30 in the morning. You can specify it has to be at this particular time. It also reduces truck traffic, so you can have multiple waste companies driving around your streets picking up from residents depending on who they choose to go with. If when you contract out, you just have one that's going around your streets. And the other benefit, which our office has a stake in, is increasing the recycling rates. So oftentimes when you have a subscription-based program, the resident does have to decide whether they want to pay that extra $2.75 per month for the recycling service. Oftentimes, even though it's a small amount comparative to the larger fee, they choose not to pay that fee. We hear from residents that they really feel like they're doing something good, and they don't feel like they should have to be paying that extra fee. So when you contract for waste and recycling, that fee is all rolled in together, and there's no additional hassle of having to call and sign up for that service. A cart is basically delivered to your house. This is what you recycle, and you just start doing it. So we do see an increase, a drastic increase in recycling in those communities that contract. For example, in subscription-based communities, in 2013, we saw an average of 9.2% recycling rate, which is the tons recycled versus the total tons generated. For communities that contract on behalf of their residents, the average was 17.92. So it's a pretty significant jump. And the final benefit that you see when you contract for waste and recycling is because you see that jump in recycling tons, you do see a jump in the residential recycling incentive funds that you would receive, which is a $1,050,000 program from our office that we give back to the communities of Hamilton County, where we give you dollars based on the tons that you've recycled. The higher your recycling rate, the more dollars per ton you received. And in 2013, Springfield Township received just over $17,000 for this program. You would expect to see more the higher that your recycling rate went. Just to give you a brief idea of where we are in this contracting phase, so our office has hired an expert in this kind of waste consortium where you have multiple townships going in together. Just because it was such a quick turnaround, we didn't have the staff resources to put together the RFP. So we hired a consultant. She is currently putting together bid specs. We have a meeting scheduled March 20th with the administrators to review those bid specs, and then it would go out onto the streets. About 30 days after it goes out onto the streets, we would expect the bids to be due, and then a month or two after that, we would want decisions from everybody. We would expect that this would probably actually be implemented between October of this year and January of 2016, just to give you an idea. Are there any questions? I kind of went through that quickly.
I just have a couple. Michelle, what are are there any downsides to it?
It is more administration on your part. So right now, it's just the residents that are having to, to deal with that hassle. So I guess, would be a program then that Springfield Township would take on. So every few years, you would have to then bid that out. So there would be some administrative costs with that. If some communities that contract out choose to bill for the service, and so the waste hauler would bill you a big bill, and then you would bill your residents. That doesn't seem to be the way that the communities involved want to go. They're looking more at the waste hauler just billing the residents directly. So that's the biggest downfall that I would see.
Have you had any problems with defaults by the waste hauler?
What do you mean by default?
Well, where they can't, fulfill the contract?
We have not seen that in this area. The closest thing would be that there was a recycling company called Abitibi Paper Retriever. You may have seen them at churches and schools. They were green and blue bins. They did go out of business a few months ago, but the large waste haulers, Republic and Rumpke, we have not seen them not be able to fulfill a contract that they entered into.
Michelle, you indicated that if we were to contract out, that we would have the option and the choice of determining what time the trucks would run through the community.
Right.
That would be the total community, not each individual resident.
That's right. So you would enter into a contract with that hauler, and typically communities will specify, a time. You can't start any earlier than 7 a.m. Sometimes they will have a lien in there for if you have really busy streets and you want those trucks off there quickly so they're not holding up traffic. You might pick a few streets that they could hit at 6 or whatever, but yeah, you would be able to specify that.
And Michelle, the $2.07 that you said was the average price where there was contracting, that includes recycling, the way I understand it, or not?
$12 and
What'd I
$7.
say?
$2, yeah.
12.
Yeah.
I meant 12. $12.
Yeah, $12.07. Yeah,
It
that
would be
includes recycling. It's waste and recycling, and that's for the average cost for communities that contract out on behalf of their residents.
Is that waste and recycling?
That's $12.07. Yes, it includes both waste and recycling, and the $22.57 includes waste and recycling as well.
So, and it's my understanding from discussions I've had, we can specify the parameters, whether or not the waste hauler will provide, garbage cans for,
Right.
for trash and recycling, et cetera. Okay.
That's right.
Michelle, what if a resident, let's say, is relocating and they have a lot of stuff to put at the curb, like furniture or something like that?
Right.
How would that resident contact you to make that possible?
Right. So usually you would put in the bid specs how you want to deal with bulk waste, which is what you're talking about. So if they have like a large couch. That hasn't necessarily been definitely defined, but I think we were talking about maybe once a month having a bulk collection. So all residents would know, the first Thursday of every month you could put out bulk materials. Different communities do that differently, but that's where the conversation was going.
So if an individual had a bulk items, and let's say they realized it was the second week in the month, then they couldn't negotiate to get someone there earlier so it wouldn't sit at the curb.
Right, so if that's something that's really important to Springfield Township, we could incorporate that in where you wanted on-call bulk collection, or you wanted weekly bulk collection. There's some communities that do that. So it would just depend. They usually send around a separate truck, sometimes with like one of those boom arms that would be able to pick it up. So there would be an added cost for having it weekly. But definitely that's something we can incorporate in. These bid specs are the communities that are participating's bid specs. They're not Hamilton County. So certainly if there's something that you want in there, let Chris or Mike know so that we can get them in there.
But most communities today do, like once a month, they'll have a specific day that's allowed to be picked up.
A lot of communities are going that route just because it is less costly. And usually, residents can get used to that, that it's just once a month.
Plan for it.
Right. There's some communities like the city of Cincinnati that do it on call, but they have their own crews that are picking that up, so.
Okay.
Now, to move forward, what I would need from you, and I think you're going to have a discussion later, but I would, if you want to be part of these bid specs, I would need to know that you're serious about wanting to move forward with it at this point. If you're hesitant and you want to hold back and kind of wait and see what comes in, that's fine. You don't have to be part of this. There are other townships that are holding off and may, down the road go out to bid. But if you want to be part of this that's going on right now with Colerain and Ross Township, I would just want to know soon.
Michelle, one more question. I did
Sure.
just wonder, do you know how many townships in Hamilton County have contracted service?
Two.
Two?
Miami Township and Columbia Township currently.
How many are getting bids at this time?
Right now, it's just Colerain is the only one that is definitely in, and then possibly Springfield.
But there are other towns.
There are other townships interested. We had a meeting in early January where we discussed it, and there was probably, half a dozen townships.
Right. I know that Sims, Sycamore, Anderson, Delhi,
Green.
Green were all considering it. And I think at the time, the consideration was mainly based on a geography issue surrounding those particular that are incorporated into this particular bid. They didn't want to have Anderson and Springfield together because it doesn't make geographic sense. And you wouldn't get the economies of scale or the
Savings.
the savings. It wouldn't be as advantageous as it would be for Springfield and Colerain and Ross to go out together.
Right.
Purely, not even so much size, but mainly geography is the reason for that. So, Michelle, I appreciate you coming out tonight. Thanks. I guess just one last thing, just so we're clear. The expectation is that by going out to bid, a community can see a 40 to 60% savings for recycling and garbage versus just what you're paying in garbage today.
Right.
So you're getting both for a substantial savings.
Yeah. Yeah, you're increasing the service and you're lowering the cost.
Which is basically what most residents are looking at, ways that they can
And then
get more service but pay less money.
Right, and then lastly, beyond the two townships in the county that currently have contracts, I'm assuming all the municipalities do?
Most of the municipalities do, right. Most of the villages and cities contract out for at least waste. There's a few that just do waste and not recycling, but almost everybody does waste and recycling.
And just to be clear, if we go out to bid, that doesn't mean we're signing a contract. We're
That's
just saying
right.
what the costs are.
Yeah.
They can make a decision later.
Right. We would want you to be pretty serious
Right,
about it,
right.
but absolutely, you don't have to go forward with it. If you see the prices and you think this isn't going to be a very good deal for our residents, then you wouldn't have to.
Michelle, one final question, and this is kind of a legal one. I would think that the vast majority of our citizens are, have Rumpke picking up for them. But say you have an agreement with, I don't know, one of the small, a Forest Green or somebody. And I don't know if those are all just month-to-month agreements or if any of them could be for a term of years, but it's my understanding that the bid specifications, this is a opt-in, or not an opt-in, you're in. There is no opt-out to this.
Right.
What would that do? I don't know, Laura, if we thought about that, what ramifications might be if you have a contract with somebody else?
My understanding is that it's not a problem, but Laura might know something I don't.
Typically, they aren't long-term contracts.
Right.
I went through this with another jurisdiction, and most of the time, the current vendors stepped aside.
Stepped aside.
Month to month, stepped aside. There wasn't a lot of transition problem. I haven't seen a year contract in waste disposal, and I suppose there could be one. We have to work that out.
I would think not in residential.
Yeah, I have not seen it. We had some month-to-month issues. We let people finish out their contract with that vendor, and we specified that in the bid specs that, for that period of time, they would have to.
From what I've seen, most residents are paying 3 months in advance, so there would be we would have to work that out, so that if they were paying 3 months in advance, that we make sure that coincide with when the program started.
And this is for residential only?
Right.
This doesn't pick up
right.
industry or large
Yeah,
or
we are
commercial.
only talking about residents. There are municipalities that would consider contracting out for their businesses, but I would say baby steps first. I would, go with the residents first. That's where you're going to see the most cost savings. The businesses are more likely to shop around and have more services available to them, so it's more of a competitive market for the businesses anyway.
Gotcha. All right, very good.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just like to add, I'm glad Michelle's here, and this was an issue we discussed in our meetings back in, I think, November or December, and Mr. Hennenkamp has been, as he's indicated and as we requested, has completed some research in this area, and so that's why we have Michelle here tonight to kind of continue to give us more information. I thank you very much, Michelle. Okay, approval of minutes. We had regular meetings December the 9th, 2014. We had a regular meeting on January the 20th, 2015. Special meetings December the 8th, 2014, January the 15th, 2015, and February the 5th, 2015. Need a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I forgot one, organizational meeting was also on December the 23rd, 2014, so if we can include that.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Now, Mr. Burning, our fiscal officer, can you give us a financial report, please?
Yes, just a second here. That's messed me up with those two motions on the one. For the month ending January 31st, 2015, the township's expenditures were $1,136,000 rounded, and the receipts were $454,000 rounded. The ending cash balance is $15 million approximately, and this includes obligations to expenditures, payroll, regular operating costs, ongoing capital improvement projects, and investments. And what I need is I request a motion to approve the receipts, warrants, payroll expenditures, update and current revenues and reports for the period ending January 31st, 2015. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And I want everyone to know that financial reports are available for viewing at the administration offices weekday during regular business hours.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is departmental action and discussion items. Mr. Hennenkamp, our administrator.
Thank you, Ms. McFarland. I have a number of action items. The first is to seek the board's authorization to enter into a memorandum of understanding between the township and the city of Wyoming. And the purpose of this memorandum of understanding is something we've actually been talking about for quite a number of years. This one, it kind of fits into the overall spirit of the collaboration efforts and different ways we've reached out to try to partner with neighboring communities where it makes sense. This one sort of focuses on our senior center and deals with a collaborative effort between the city and the township in which we have adequate and very ample space for our seniors, good meeting facilities. That's something that the city of Wyoming doesn't have quite the same capacity for. However, their staff to do programming is probably is a little more robust. As we just with Tom, he's kind of torn a lot of different ways, and so
primarily what this agreement does is allow us to partner in that way where residents from Wyoming can come up, put on programs that not only would be available for our seniors, but their seniors using our facility, but Wyoming would have a stronger role in the programming side of things where the township is providing the space. That generally is it. I know the board has copies of this, but that kind of highlights probably the main emphasis of the agreement. There are some reciprocal membership language where seniors who belong to our senior center would also then be able to participate in the Wyoming Recreation Center at the same rate that a Wyoming resident would. And then the seniors from Wyoming that are members of their facility can belong to the township facility, our senior center. So all in all, I mean, it's some small steps, but I think it makes a lot of sense and will benefit both their seniors and our seniors in improving the programming. So don't know if the board has any questions, but like I said, I know you have copies of it. That's kind of the gist of what this is trying to establish.
I think it's a really great step in the right direction, and it's, again, the collaboration between the two that allows our seniors who live not only in Wyoming but in Springfield Township to have a resource. And we all know that people are aging in place and aging and living longer, and they're looking for activities, and they don't like to be called seniors. So I've learned that, but we have a lot of folks at home and enjoying their ability to be home, and it's just, I think, a great asset to the community to have this partnership with them.
Yeah, a lot of credit goes to Tom, obviously. He's worked a long time to bring this partnership together.
Absolutely.
Any comments?
No, I think it's a great idea. I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding.
Seconded.
And to authorize our Administrator Mike Hennenkamp to execute it on behalf of the board.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item I have is a request that we've received from the Mount Healthy Junior High School for a second school resource officer. As the board's aware, how many years ago was it? At one time, we did have two.
Correct, 3 years ago.
3 years ago, we did have two. They then cut back to one, I think primarily for some budget reasons, and did receive a request from the superintendent for a second one for the remainder of this year, and then she also indicated that they've sort of have already allocated funds and would be in position to authorize it for the 2015-16 school year as well. So I asked Assistant Chief Browder to look into this with the staff, just to make sure from a staffing perspective, since this is hitting us a little bit kind of in midstream, something we hadn't planned for. Lieutenant Colonel Browder is comfortable that we can meet the staffing requirements at this time for the remainder of the year, and then we'll have a little bit more time, obviously, the next school year to be prepared for it. The cost for this would obviously be included. They'll pay the cost involved in having this officer there. It's essentially the same contract that we have, the same terms for the school resource officer that we have there now. The only difference, obviously, is going to be prorated because it's not going to be for the full year, so it'll be prorated for that second one based on when he starts. And the only other caveat would, be some language that I would put in there, just in the event if we did have a staffing shortfall, we may need to pull that individual either on a daily or a weekly basis as needed. We don't really anticipate that. That's just kind of a caveat I think we ought to include to give us some flexibility in the event of emergency.
And that's for this 78 days left in the school system?
No, that's just them saying that's what's left in this contract.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think we'd have to have that language in there for the second, for next year's contract.
Okay.
I'm just saying for that 78-day period, since this is coming up sort of impromptu, our ability to get someone in there, just in the event that we would have a staffing shortage because of an injury or something unexpected that we couldn't account for at this time. So really just need the authorization to enter into that. As I said, the contract will essentially be what you see in the agreement before you with a few modifications as explained, due to the fact that it's just to the end of the year and with the emergency language that I'm recommending.
I'll make a motion. We authorize the township administrator to sign the contract with the modifications discussed.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item I have is board's authorization to move forward and accept a bid that we received from the Henderson Truck Equipment Company. This would be for a single-axle dump truck, bed, snowplow, salt spreader and all the related hydraulics for one of our salt trucks. We purchased the salt truck through the state bid. This is the bed and the remaining components of it. And we did have a bid opening on Thursday, February the 5th. For this, we received one bidder for this, and that was in the amount of $58,800. The estimate was $60,000. So seeking to award the bid to Henderson Truck Equipment in that amount upon final review by the Township Service Director, Legal Counsel, and myself.
And I would just like to add, this has already been in our budget. It's not from.
Yes, it's a budgeted item. We budgeted $60,000. That's kind of what we anticipated. Pretty straightforward.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Comments?
I'll just say under comments that there was a time where we decided that we would go towards these stainless steel bodies as a way to stretch our investments that we make. They're more expensive than the steel ones, but when you're hauling salt all the time in these things, the steel ones just rust out. I mean, John, what's the life expectancy of one of these compared to just a ordinary bed?
I mean, we've had them for a number of years, and we haven't experienced any problems with them at all. Normally with the steel beds, a couple of years ago, you're starting to see rust and a lot of wear on them. So, I mean, these stainless steel beds could last for 20, 30 years, my guess. I mean, we're pretty easy. We don't haul a lot of heavy material in them, stone, stuff like that. We don't do anything to really bang up the beds themselves. So we clean them all the time when we're done with them. So
We can reuse these things, and maybe the truck
yeah,
dies, we can put them on another.
The concept behind it was that, when the cabin chassis eventually gets out, that we could take that stainless steel bed, switch it onto a newer cabin chassis, and save having the expense of another truck bed.
Okay. I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And then the last action item I have is just a request that the board approve edibles and such as an approved caterer for the Grove caterer list.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
They are approved.
Just a few discussion items. The first one is just I don't need any action on this, but just to note that we try about twice a year as we go through surplus materials that are of no value. I authorize the disposal of those items, and the board has a long list of the things that we've disposed of that have been reviewed by the department head. And this is policy. This fits in with what our policy is, but that generally 2, maybe 3 times a year, depending on the amount of stuff we have. We just simply note that we've authorized that. And so this is the first time doing that for 2015. Kind of in line with what Michelle Balls was talking about on the solid waste district, or the consideration. Obviously, she went into most of the details on that, but one, as you mentioned, is authorized. We've been participating in the early stages of formulating some bid specs, and there's going to be further meetings on that to try to narrow down exactly what those specs are, if the board does in fact decide to go out to bid. I think, Joe, the only thing that I would maybe mention that she didn't, your question of what's the negative, is you're taking away choice from residents. Now, I think we all understand there's not a whole lot of choice in this particular marketplace, so that's probably, pretty remote. But that is one thing, is once aside for somebody that maybe has an existing short-term contract, once this contract is in place, residents are not permitted to go out and seek their own arrangement. They are required by law to go with the township hauler. So it's not, even though we've kind of referred to this as garbage aggregation, it is significantly different in that respect, that even in our energy aggregation program, somebody can choose not to participate. They can opt out. You cannot opt out of this program from a residential. So that's one thing that we want to consider. And with that in mind, we have our State of the Township event that's coming up on March the 15th, and that's obviously another good opportunity to get the word out that we're considering this. About 9 days after that, we have our work session on March the 24th, and I would maybe propose that we set aside March the 24th and conduct a public hearing to allow residents to maybe learn a little bit more. We can advertise specifically for this purpose, and just hear if there is anyone that would be opposed to this, the board could have that information. I think that timing would work out really well, because we're going to need to decide very shortly thereafter whether we're going to participate in the bidding process. So it allows you to get public feedback at that time. The other thing that kind of coincides with that is our 2015 permanent appropriations generally are finalized, and we have to have that done before April the 1st. So I would maybe propose that we do a public hearing on the 2015 permanent appropriations as well, sort of combine them, run them back to back, do the solid waste meeting, and then anybody also to do a quick review and wants to comment on the permanent appropriations. And we could maybe make that at 5:30, do our regular work session at 4:30, and then start the public hearings at 5:30 for that evening.
I think that would be good. That way we would have individuals here already, and then they can also continue to participate.
That's,
And get educated on both areas.
yeah, it's good timing. And like I said, it's with the State of the Township being the 15th, we can sort of remind everybody of those two additional opportunities to get more information on those topics.
I agree.
I agree also. Maybe we'll find out something
Okay,
from the
maybe.
resident.
Have more information by then
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, I like I said, I don't think there's, it seems like it's going to be all plus in the savings for residents, but, that is maybe the one little
Pretty
negative.
significant saving.
Yeah, I mean, if that's in fact what we realize, that's
If that is
It's a lot of
true,
money.
I would think that most residents would really be interested in saving as much money as they can, and also continue to get quality services in the area of waste management.
Well, the other part that we've talked about is with the recycling being included, the recycling is not only that gonna be good for the residents, it's gonna bring in more money for the township and our recycling fund, and allow us, in all likelihood, to avoid the cost of the recycling bins that we have out here, because everybody will have that, at their curbside. So potentially could, really be a good cost saver for us. Probably, do we want to set a motion, maybe pass a motion to set that March 24th at 5:30 for the public hearings for the discussions of the Waste Disposal District and the 2015 permanent appropriations?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I think for the first time since I can remember, we have no personnel update.
Oh, my goodness.
There's not a single bunch of activity. Larry, I don't know what's going on this month, but that's, I believe, a first. One other thing I just might mention, just an FYI for the board, before I ask Kim to bring us up to date on community events and programs, is we did recently, as the board remembers, back in, I think it was 2000 or 2001, the board went out for its first ever bond rating, and this bond rating was in anticipation of doing the construction projects that we did here, this building, or improvements to our police station, and then also the service department facility. And recently, that Moody's Investment Service, who did the original bond rating back then, periodically goes through reviews of our bond rating. With a lot of the things that happened back in 2008 on Wall Street, their structure and some of their policies have become a lot more rigorous. And Kim Cox and myself did participate on several conference calls with Moody's as we went through the bond rating, and I'm happy to report that Moody's did confirm our rating, which is a AA2 for the township on our general obligation limited tax bonds. So it doesn't have a huge impact. I mean, I guess you could think of the bond rating in some ways as like a community's credit rating. And this is important, obviously, to investors. It gives them some indication of the stability. I will say there was a great deal of concern from Moody's. They were very concerned about our reducing revenues, as they've noticed, the loss of revenues, the things that we've gone through with the state, and some of the steps that the township has taken over the years. I think had a lot to do, not only in the cutbacks that we've made, but also in some of our revenue enhancements. Had we not done that, I doubt that we would have kept this rating. I mean, they scrutinized those areas very, very heavily during the conference call, and had a lot of very good questions about that. And, just have sort of seen the stability of what the board has and the general governance of the board, I think were all things that weighed in our favor positively. So anyway, just like I said, just a quick update.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
I'll ask Kim to bring us up to date quick on what's going on with community events and programs.
Thank you. The first thing I just wanted to bring up is actually from Tom. He wanted to let everybody know that the Grove Banquet Hall actually received the 2015 Wedding Wires Couples Choice Award. That is a pretty notable website that has different venues and services for weddings, and the Grove is on there. And we were able to get that award by all of the reviews that we've received throughout the last year. So that puts us in the top 5% of their vendors on wedding wires. So that's great news for the Grove. I think we're 5 stars all the way across. So that's definitely, Tom and Karen are to be commended on that. As far as upcoming events, our Daddy-Daughter Dance is completely sold out. We have a resident committee that is helping organize our community concerts, and the next meeting for anybody that's interested in helping out is this Thursday at noon over at Brugger's. So that group is continuing to grow, and we actually have enough people to have an evening meeting probably once a month also to help out with that. Our Mom Prom is March the 21st, and actually the police department can probably talk better about it, but the Citizens Police Academy will be reforming a group, and they're starting on March the 9th.
Correct. That's a 10-week program, Monday nights, 6:30 to 9:30. We do still have some openings, so you can call myself or register on our website.
Other than the department and activity reports, that is all I have.
I have a question. Mr. Musselman, I know you guys have been out on the roads during the past month, the snow removal.
Jinx this, Gwen.
Oh, I know, because the weather. At least we're not up in the New England states. That is really something. But I was just interested because I've run into a lot of our residents, and they have just been really pleased with the services that they've received in their communities and their neighborhoods in relationship to the street. So how many times have we been out, and how much salt have we used?
So far this season, we've had about 8 really significant events. We've used about 900 tons of salt. By this date last year, we had used almost 3,200 tons of salt at about 27 significant events. So we've saved over $150,000 really in just material usage alone this year over last. So we've been very fortunate.
That's great.
We're not out of winter
Put a
yet.
jinx on us, I know.
Not out of winter yet.
If you do,
but
you're going to hear
spring-
about
I
it.
know. It was interesting because I was listening to the weather this evening or this morning, and they were talking about perhaps we were going to have a little, it's toward the end of the winter, they're saying, and we perhaps may have a little more snow. And I'm like, yeah, I just chuckled. We all hope we don't, but if we do, we've got a fantastic service department that's taking care of us.
We do the best we can.
Thank you. Okay. Resolutions. On top of not having personnel report, we have one resolution. I couldn't believe this.
Not grown yet.
It's been a long time since we haven't had a weed resolution.
I know.
Too cold, everything's dead. Neighbors don't go outside to complain on another neighbor, so it's just, winter's good in my life.
Our one and only resolution is Resolution Number 13, 2015. It's authorizing the trade-in of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use motor vehicles, road machinery, equipment, or tools in the service department. Need a motion?
So moved.
Seconded?
Mr. Burning?
Aye.
Mr. Honalaw?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Old business. Do you have any old business, Mr. Honor?
I do not.
Or do I?
Anyone have any new business?
Not this evening.
I do not.
The only thing I have, I just want to update our residents. We had a discussion last month, and we've had some discussions over the past year about, the status of the Beech Grove Cemetery. And I just want to share with you all that it's still an ongoing process. It's the topic and the issue is to be discussed sometime in the early spring regarding what our next step is. So we've made some progress since the last meeting. Mr. Honderlaw and I have been making contacts with different individuals to make sure that it will be on the agenda, hopefully in April, so that we will be able, probably with our April meeting, be able to give you an update on where we are, because it's the first part of April. So just stay tuned. We are continuing to be diligent in that area, and hopefully we'll be able to come to some sort of resolution soon. Now on our agenda, we have citizens' participation, and this is an opportunity for our citizens to comment or share with us some good news or share with us some concerns that they may have. We always like the positive things first, but I know that there may be some issues of concern that someone may have, hopefully not. So this is the opportunity to do that, and if you choose to do that, you can step to the podium, and I would ask if there is an individual at the podium that we abstain from any discussion or conversation in the audience. Citizens' participation. Ms. Fields?
I'll need
Yes.
your name and address.
I'm Anna Fields, and I'm the Vice President of the Civic Association for Pleasant Run Farms. We've had some problems with people moving into our community and not adhering to our covenant. The main problem, I think, has been the fact that they don't have access, or some people didn't get a copy of the covenant. So this past month, we published a copy in our memo. Then we were wanting to ask if it's possible for those who are issuing the permits to mention that although it's okay with the township, according to the zoning stipulations, they should also check to see if it's okay with their community covenant. If we could get some help maybe with the people who issue the permits, suggesting that people check to see if they're adhering to their community covenant, then maybe we can solve some of these problems. It has to do a lot with fencing, which I think the first time I came up here, I was talking about building the permits and the fencing. But we can't hold people accountable if they don't have the information and know what is required in the covenant.
I think that's probably something we could do pretty simply.
Yes.
Anytime we issue a permit, especially in Pleasant Run Farms where we know, the majority of that area is covered by restrictive covenants. And this, I think the board understands what we're talking about is obviously we have our zoning laws, but subdivisions, and anytime a subdivision is plotted, they can have private deed restrictions. Those are not enforceable by any public entity, but they're sort of a civil matter between that association and that particular homeowner. But it's an easy thing. I think we can put that right on there. We'll give them a permit and says, hey, be sure to double check with any private deed restrictions that you may have. And
Absolutely. I actually think the permit actually does say something of that nature now on it. But in particular, Pleasant Run Farms, which I think off the cuff, is really the only one that I know of has covenant restrictions as far as the neighborhood goes in the township.
You can
There's a
find
few
some
others.
private-
There are some.
There's a couple
Yeah, I know
private
Beach
Yeah,
does.
there's
development back in, Wright Farm.
Wright Farms does.
They're few and
Beach
far
does.
between, but my point is, I think that's easy to do for the small number of communities that actually have that, and we can do that very easily.
Okay, thank you.
Great
I
question.
think that's a good suggestion, though, so that people don't get their zoning certificate and think, now I can do whatever, and I'm not limited to other things. It's good for them, them to know, I need to check it all out.
Checklist of things. You
Yes.
Need to check, make sure you don't have that on your
Right.
deed.
Yeah.
Is there one uniform covenant for all of the homes in Pleasant Run Farms, or was it done in sections and there are different covenants in place? Do you know?
I'm not sure about that. The copy that I have is yellow because I've been there so long. I will check to find out, though, if there are different.
There's two sections to what we consider Pleasant Run Farms. There's Kimber Mill Village, which is actually the name of the subdivision. And then there's another area to the northwest of that is also what we consider Pleasant Run Farms, but is a separate subdivision with their own individual restrictions as well. So there's two different, as far as I know, there's two. Yes.
I'm just thinking if we say to someone, you need to check out these covenants, the next question will be, well, where do I get a copy? And of course, they could go to the courthouse and do a title search. Are they available anywhere through Pleasant Run Farm Civic Association?
Other than just us publishing it in the memo, which went to everybody in that area last month, we've been trying to figure out a way to get that in the hands of the new people who move into the neighborhood.
But you do have a copy of it. So if you give us a copy, we can make copies, and if somebody asks for it, we would have it available to them. Because that would probably be the easiest way for them.
It's easy for us to flag anytime we issue a permit in Pleasant Run Farms. We just attach that and say, hey, these aren't ours, but you have to also adhere to these on a civil matter, and those are on your deed.
If we're going to do that, I think there should be the caveat that these are the covenants that we're aware of in Pleasant Run Farms. You may want to check your own chain of title before you start proceeding with improvements.
And perhaps if you're aware of covenants in other communities, it would be across the board for those individuals, those communities, the few as well. Okay, thanks.
I mean, the only problem, it doesn't just have to be a subdivision. So I could sell you a piece of property, one lot, and put deed restrictions on that. So, I mean, it could be an individual deed can have those, so we don't want to go too far with that, but I think a general thing where we know about them, we can notify, here's where to find them, but any person selling a property can deed restrict it, and a lot of times, land that we're given that years ago, when we would get a piece of ground for a park, it's deed restriction, that can never be anything but a park. So it's not just subdivisions where you would have things like this. This is just a private arrangement between a buyer and a seller that's put on that deed. But it's not enforceable by us, it's only enforceable by that other party. Or in the case of a civic association or something else.
And as I said, I think our permit now has a disclaimer to that effect on it.
Okay.
But we can call it out a little more, and where we know about them, we can direct
Good
them
idea.
where to go, but say you should, to your point, Joe, I think there always should be that, hey, we don't know about them. You really would have to go to your own deed to be
Correct.
100% sure.
Correct.
Should I bring a copy to the next meeting?
You don't have to wait till then, just if you want to just
Drop it off at the ad.
drop it off or email it if you can, whatever. Yeah, you don't have to wait
Chris?
till the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to address the podium or the township trustees? Seeing none, I see there's a young man, and I think he's doing homework. Is that true, or are you working on a badge? You're working on your badge? And do you mind just sharing with us which badge you're working on?
Communications
And
and citizenship evaluation.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And feel free, after our meeting, we'd be happy to talk with you to answer any additional questions you may have. to ensure that you have a great deal of information for your badge. Thank you. All right. Well, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.